Today marking 2 months until Inauguration Day for President-elect Trump. We're going to have all kinds of coverage leading up to that day. And on the day, you can watch everything right here live, raw, and unfiltered on Live Now from Fox. That is set for January 20th, of course, 2025. A lot to discuss as always, so I do want to bring in Rich Rubino, political analyst and historian. Thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to join us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me on again.
Of course. Well, first off, I do want to talk about Trump's inauguration. As I mentioned, we are 2 months away. What do we expect that all of that is going to look like? Do we have any idea just yet?
Not really. I would expect it would be foundationally like any other inauguration address. Last time was a little bit different because Donald Trump actually left office, or at least left the White House the day before the inauguration, did not actually attend the inauguration of his successor, Joe Biden. Almost always the predecessor attends the inauguration. They actually meet with the incoming president. They have coffee together in the White House. Then they take the limousine over to the Capitol together in a show of unity, basically. Then they go to they give the speech, and sometimes the president will even recognize the former president that they ran against. I mean, Jimmy Carter, for example, in 1977, began his speech by saying about Gerald Ford, who was there, "I want to thank my predecessor for all he's done to heal our land." So I think that my guess is that Joe Biden, even though it's probably begrudgingly, will certainly attend the inauguration and will probably be in that car as well.
We've heard a lot about Trump's administrative picks. He started naming them, I would say, right after he was the president-elect. Is that how it normally works? Do we see these names start to come out in large numbers almost right away?
Yes, absolutely. Usually there's a little bit of a process, especially during the campaign, toward the end of the campaign, where the president kind of it's really kind of surreptitious, but they're really looking at who potentially could serve, and then the cabinet could serve in those positions. And then they kind of rock and roll as soon as as soon as they have a president-elect. There's some interviews, certainly. Usually there are a lot of loyalists that the president will choose. You're seeing that's certainly no different here with Donald Trump. Many people have been very loyal to him. Sometimes people that have gone back that have gone back decades with the president will potentially get positions either on the White House staff, which do not need a Senate confirmation, or as some sort of a cabinet member. And once in a while, you have a position. You have an instance where a cabinet member or a potential cabinet member has to withdraw their name. For example, Tom Daschle did that when he was Health and Human Services Secretary for Obama. Bill Clinton had his first two nominees for Attorney General had issues involving a nanny that was undocumented. They had to withdraw their name. But usually the president, even if it's a Senate with the Senate that's under control of the other party, usually the nominations tend to go through without very much controversy.
Are there any picks right now that you've seen so far that stand out to you? A lot of political experts will say, you know, this name or this name, but any of them as a political expert that do stand out to you?
I think Matt Gaetz, certainly, that was the one that really surprised a lot of people when he nominated him. Matt Gaetz is now a former congressman from Florida. He's since resigned. He was under investigation for allegedly having an underage sexual relationship, or for having sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl, who says that he paid $10,000 over a 2-year period. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but that's something that's really brought in a lot of coverage. I think that you may have a situation, this could be the first time since Charles Warren in 1925, when Calvin Coolidge nominated him for Attorney General, and it turned out that he had improper relations with the sugar trust, that you may have a Senate of the own party of the president voting against the confirmation of somebody that the president nominates, with obviously the Senate being controlled by the Republicans. So that's one possibility. I think it was certainly very surprising. I think Dr. Oz at as being in charge of Medicare and Medicaid, I think that's usually someone who's more of an administrator that takes over a position like that. It's not really somebody who's kind of famous or who's really known very well, and that's what's happened over there. So those are the ones that have really kind of surprised me. And frankly, Marco Rubio is Secretary of State, because Donald Trump is very much a non-interventionist in foreign policy. He wants to retrench from many places. Marco Rubio, his former opponent in 2016, is someone who's very much an interventionist and very hawkish. So when you give the most powerful position to the most powerful position in the cabinet to someone who really disagrees and's been kind of a critic of your foreign policy, I think that really puts a lot of head scratching.
I want to go in reverse a little bit and talk more about the confirmation hearings themselves, because when do we expect those to get underway? Do we have any idea just yet? Obviously, I've mentioned it a few times, but Inauguration Day is 2 months away. So when do these confirmation hearings begin? And then also, do we get to watch them, the public?
Usually, yes, you do. And usually it's before the inauguration. And usually they're relatively pro forma because usually the Senate usually the Senate accedes to the president in terms of what the president wants, who the president wants to nominate. Oftentimes the nomination will pass, like Janet Reno, for example, when Clinton nominated it, this was a third chance for attorney general. It was 98-0. That means senators, the most conservative senators like Jesse Helms from North Carolina, would vote for it. It's very rare that you have senators that vote against confirmation picks, especially certainly in their own party and sometimes in the other party as well, or you may have two or three. But this time, because Donald Trump is such a lightning rod, such a polarizing or controversial figure, if you will, I can see a scenario where some Democrats, or some Republicans rather, may vote against the president's nomination. Of course, the president has the option, and you'd have to talk with John Thune, the incoming Senate Majority Leader, about this. If the Senate recesses for 10 days, he can then make a recess appointment, which will last until the end of the current Senate term. So that would essentially be up till the end of 2026.
You kind of touched on this already, but I want to dig a little bit deeper here, because now that Republicans are in control of the Senate, does that change anything overall about the confirmation hearings and kind of how they play out?
I don't think so, because usually whoever the president nominates gets confirmed. It's very rare that that the person does not get confirmed. And once in a while, you'll have a scenario like with Tom Dassel, for example, where the person will take their hat out of the ring, kind of, if you will, before they actually go to Senate confirmation, so they don't embarrass themselves and don't embarrass the president. But that's really what you see. You're going to see a scenario, I think, where most nominees will get confirmed pretty much pretty unreservedly. There are going to be some exceptions. Matt Gaetz is certainly one of them. I think that the Senate wants to see once the Senate Judiciary Committee will want to see what the Ethics Committee had, what their report would have said, for example. So that's one that's going to be very controversial. And there's always one or two that kind of take you by they're very kind of surprising, if you will, or there's something that you find out about somebody that you never really knew beforehand. Of course, they have investigations internally in the administrations, and they try to find this out, the incoming administrations. But sometimes there's stuff that just kind of goes by the wayside, if you will.
My last question for you. We've talked a lot about Trump, but you have to remember there are still 2 months in Biden's term here. So I've talked to a lot of political experts and asked their opinion. I want to get your take as well. What do we expect from Biden in his final 2 months in office?
It's very interesting. We don't know, of course. He needs congressional approval if he wants to have a major piece of legislation. I mean, it would have to be passed during the lame duck session. There's certainly judicial nominees that he's getting passed right now, that Chuck Schumer is trying to bring through so that he can have more judicial nominees than Donald Trump did last time around. There's that type of thing. Sometimes presidents, it's just more of a transition. It's more, they spend a lot of time on the transition, not necessarily with new initiatives. Bill Clinton was kind of an exception to that rule. He had promised on kind of his low water mark on the day that the House impeached him that he would work to the last hour of the last day as administration. Consequently, he did work on to the last hour of the last day, and actually every day from January 14th to about January 20th had a new announcement. And the last day of his administration, he actually made an announcement that he was doing some crime control funding and where that was going to neighborhood watchdog groups. So the president has some power. They can certainly do some executive orders, but the new president can also rescind those. The president took a foreign trip, met with some leaders, and that's met some leaders in Central America. So that's something that any president can do. But I think that most of the leaders were probably looking to the next administration. There probably wasn't that much that he could have really accomplished outside of just having kind of a goodwill tour, if you will.
All right. Rich Rubino, as always, thank you so much for providing that expertise. We appreciate it. Anything else you want to add about any of this? Obviously, a lot to discuss, but anything you want to add before I let you go?
I would just say that it is almost universal that a president especially if they're in a Senate that's in their own party, that their nominations get confirmed. It was literally 199 years, it'll be 100 years since there was somebody who was not confirmed and had the members of their own party, and that was and it would actually pass. He actually failed by one vote. That was Charles Warren for Attorney General. So my guess is that Matt Gaetz would probably be the only one that would be that controversial to the extent that he might not actually get chosen. That being said, there's only 53 Republican senators, and you have Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who are very moderate, who might scuttle the process. Then you have Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who's up for re-election in 2026, and what's really a purple state, wants to show some independent bona fides. And Congress Senator Cassidy from Louisiana is somebody who's voted against, who voted for, rather, the conviction of Donald Trump. So he's no front to Donald Trump. So I can see potentially those 4 Republicans being kind of recalcitrant to, if you will, toward the president's wishes. And there really are no Democrats like a John Tester or a Joe Manchin, kind of a moderate type Democrat left, that you potentially would vote for the president's agenda or the president's confirmation choices.
Rich Rubino, as always, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. You as well.